On today's Tech Help for Churches, segmenting your email list. Hi, and welcome again to another episode of Tech Help for Churches. This is the show where every week we talk all about using the internet, the web, new media, social media, that sort of thing in your church. My name is Paul Allen Clifford. I'm your host. I'd love for you to join the conversation, ask your questions, leave your comments, etc. Just head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact. You'll find all my contact information there, or if you'd prefer, if it's more your speed and you're watching the video, just leave a comment below the video. That's perfectly cool as well. Or you might guess, since we talk about social media here, that I have a Twitter account. So you can reach me at Paul Allen Cliff, PaulAlanclif, over on Twitter. So let's get started talking about today's topic. So in previous weeks, we've talked all about what kind of service you should use to create your email list, how to sign up for one, once you're signed up, how to get people on the list, etc. And today I thought that we would take a look at how to segment out that list. Now, there are a couple of ways to do this, but I'm going to show you my list. This is a little behind the curtain here, and then give you some ideas of what you can do with your church, since of course your church is different from my ministry, since my ministry is all about helping churches and you're a church helping the people that go to your church, whether you call them attenders, members, parishioners, whatever you call them, that's the point, and helping the people outside the church. So let's head on over to my computer and we'll take a look at the back side of my MailChimp account. First off, you'll notice I have multiple lists. What you might notice is there's no one on these, a couple of these lists. Some have one, some have 5. There's a very good reason for that. Each of these lists is based on what I'm giving away. So basically, I know that people are interested in ProPresenter if they get the Pro 5 stage display gift, the ProPresenter 5 course gift, the video course gift, they're interested in video, the copy of my book Tweeting Church for free, they're interested in social media, etc. So I get people onto each of these lists, and then I move them over to my master list, the trinitydigitalmedia.com list. Now, what I want to show you is, I'm going to block off these names down here, but what I want to show you is that once I get them on the list, I have them segmented. So if I were to click on this one, it would give me an action here, and that is where I can add them to the group. So I have a group based on what gift people got, and that tells me what they're interested in, so I can send them emails that are appropriate to them. So if someone is only interested in social media, for example, I might mention my video course a couple of times, but I'm not going to just drive that into their head over and over again if they're not interested in that. That just doesn't make any sense. So that's how I've done this, and you might be thinking, well, Paul, that really doesn't help me. I'm a church. But does it? Let me give you some ideas of different segments that you can segment your list into. Deacons and elders, depending on what we call the polity of your church, the organizational structure. You may have deacons, you might have elders, you might have deacons and elders. Don't know, because different denominations listen to this podcast, but I just wanted to mention that. So if you've got, they could be on a list, or you could have a deacons list, and you get the point. You could have a list for kid parents, parents of elementary and younger children, a list for parents of teens, a list for your Sunday school teachers or your small group leaders, a list for the staff of your church. Now maybe that's 2 people, so that doesn't make sense in your church, but what if it's 15? You could see how that might be useful. A list for each of the teams or committees, a list for new members, a list for people that are really embody the vision of your church, the core members. You could have a list for people that don't go to your church but are kind of on the outside, and so you can get people to join your list based on giving them, parenting tips or things like that. So you can just see how this can go on and on. List for retired adults, a list for singles, etc. So you can do that, and I suggest that you do it the same way that I'm doing this with creating a main list and then having a group that you can put people into, and then based on those groups you can create what we call segments. So a segment, you'll see that I have all kinds of segments here, but a segment can be just someone that's in a group. But you could put all the parents in one group, even though you've got all the parents in one segment, even though you've got a group of elementary and younger parents and a group of teenage parents. Well, you can put them all in a single group. So if there's some newsletter that applies to all parents of children under 18, you could send that to them. And then if you had another email that only applied to elementary school and younger children, you could send it to them. And one that only applied to teenagers, you could send it to them. You see how that works? And you can also send, since they're all on this singular list, you can send every single person in your church that's on your list the church-wide email. So what advantage does that have? Well, let's say that you have kids in elementary school. You might be really interested in the back-to-school bash that you're having in the fall. But if you have teenagers and the back-to-school bash is only for elementary and younger children, that wouldn't necessarily be important. So by segmenting off these different groups, you can send emails that get more and more personal. And also, since I told you in last week's episode that I ask for first names, there's actually a variable. Remember math class where there were letters? There's a variable in MailChimp that you can use to create, to basically say, put the first name here. And if there is no first name, then you can have a substitute word. I use friend. But you could have brother or sister, or something like that. You could put in just a generic term there, and that would be something else that's really powerful that you can do. Now, you can segment based on what list people sign up to, but there's another way to segment, and that is you can have people self-select. So when you create your list, here, let's go to sign up forms on this. I don't have people sign up directly to this form, to this list generally, but if I wanted to, what I could have them do is, here, let's go to the sign up form so that I can show this to you. Okay, yeah. So I have a what gift did you get choice with checkboxes. So in my case, that tells me what they're interested in. So this past Christmas season, since I send gifts to all the people on my list, I had people go back and check what they'd gotten so that I didn't send it to them again. Well, in your case, you can every once in a while send out an email that says, hey, by the way, if you're a parent, make sure you click on this link and it'll take them back to this list and check that you're a parent. Or if you even wanted to, for your sign up form, you could have this with the check box and say, check all the newsletters that you would be interested in receiving. And one could be all, one could be just the church-wide newsletter, things like that. So you can segment them this way. You can put them in groups basically directly by having them check these checkboxes. But remember, smaller amounts of information that you get from people will yield a bigger opt-in rate. So people will be much more likely to fill in their first name and email address than first name, last name, birthday, email address, mailing address, names of each of their children, name of their spouse. You see how you can get to the point where it's got a whole lot more information than you need, and it's much better to get that slowly over time than to not get it at all. I was in a hangout this past week where we talked a little bit about this, and that brings me to another point, which is if you import people on the list, make sure onto this list, make sure that you get their permission either ahead of time or once you import them, send them all an email once and say, hey, if you don't want to be on this list, if you don't want to get this newsletter, let me know and I'll remove you from the list. So that's an opt-out kind of email. You could also do it in reverse if you wanted to be really nice, and that is send an email and say, I will remove you from this list unless I hear from you. And that would be an opt-in style of email, and you're going to get a lot fewer people to opt in than if you just have people opt out. So in one way, the default is, hey, I'm on the list, and you have to ask to be removed. The other way is to say, hey, you're not going to be on the list unless you agree to be on it. And people are lazy or they'll forget or what have you. So just keep that in mind. That was just a brief aside. So that's a couple of things that you can do. And like I have here, you can hide certain fields. So if there's just one field that you want people to see, then you can show just that. So just keep that in mind. And I think that that's a really powerful tool that is designed for business, but the church can absolutely make use of this. And while this isn't a free feature, another cool thing that you can do is autoresponders, or what MailChimp calls automation. You can see this, that my account has automation because I've got a really old account. The free ones don't come with that anymore. But if you had automation, you could, for new members of your church, just send a few automatic emails from the pastor saying, hey, welcome to the church. Here's a little bit about the history of the church. Here's my vision for the church, and you could have 3 or 5 emails that just automatically go out on an interval as soon as people sign up. So that's some of the other powerful things that you can do with MailChimp. And basically almost all the other email newsletter providers. Well, I hope that helped you. I hope that that was a situation where you thought, wow, that was something that I could really use. If you like this content, don't hesitate to sign up for my email newsletter. Sometimes I create content specifically for the newsletter that you won't see anywhere else, like some of the things I've been doing very recently. So head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/gifts, and there you can find a few little gifts that I'll give you in addition to the newsletter itself, all free, just for signing up. So head on over and get those. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with trinitydigitalmedia.com.